The sound that woke me up that morning wasn't birds, or wind, or cattle moving in the pasture. It was wood cracking apart like a bone snapping. I knew that sound instantly. My gate. I stepped onto the porch just in time to see a white SUV punch straight through the cedar frame I'd built with my own hands. No hesitation. No braking. Just raw entitlement on four wheels. The driver didn't stop. Didn't apologize. Didn't even look guilty. She sped past like my land was nothing more than a private driveway she felt entitled to use. That was the moment I realized this wasn't an accident. This was a challenge. Before I tell you how this ended, and trust me, it ends in a way she never saw coming, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I'm curious how far this story travels. When I bought this ranch on the edge of Pine Hollow, I was chasing silence. After 30 years in construction, dust in my lungs, supervisors yelling, and neighbors arguing about mailbox colors, I wanted land that didn't argue back. White skies, gravel roads, a gate that closed at night and meant something. That gate wasn't decorative. It was a boundary, and I built it myself. Thick cedar beams, iron hinges, set deep into the ground. It marked the exact line where my property began and the HOA's power ended. Because here's the important part. I wasn't part of their HOA. No dues, no votes, no authority over me. And that gate made it very clear. I hadn't even lived there a full month before I met her. She rolled up one afternoon in a spotless white SUV, sunglasses too big for her face, blonde hair perfectly styled like she'd stepped out of a brochure. She slowed just enough to make eye contact, smiled without warmth and said, "Nice place." I nodded. "Thanks." Then she floored it. She drove straight through my closed gate like it wasn't even there. Wood shrieked. Hinges screamed. Gravel exploded under her tires as she disappeared across my pasture. I stood frozen, trying to process what I'd just watched. At first, I told myself she was lost. GPS mistake. Wrong turn. But the way she waved in her rearview mirror told me everything. She knew exactly what she was doing. That evening, I repaired the damage, reset the posts, reinforced the hinges, told myself it wouldn't happen again. A week later, it did. This time she didn't slow down at all. I ran onto the porch yelling that it was private property. She laughed, actually laughed, and shouted back something about community access before vanishing down the drive again. Community access. I checked my deed that night, then checked it again. No easement, no shared road, no legal excuse. The next day at the feed store, two old locals just shook their heads when I mentioned her name. "She runs the HOA like a kingdom," one said. "Once she picks you," the other added, "she don't let go." I should have listened, because that gate stopped being just wood and hinges. It became a symbol, and she was determined to break it, and me down. After the second time she smashed through my gate, the letters started arriving. Not emails, not friendly warnings, certified mail, thick envelopes with official-looking seals, stamped urgency like I'd committed some kind of crime. First one said my fencing violated community aesthetic standards. I laughed when I read that, out loud, standing alone in my kitchen. I wasn't in their HOA. I never signed anything, and the fence sat entirely on my deeded land. I wrote a short response, polite, direct, included copies of my property survey. 3 days later, another letter. This one claimed my work truck was commercial equipment and therefore prohibited from being parked overnight. The truck that hadn't moved in weeks. The truck parked behind my barn, completely invisible from the road. I drove into town and asked the clerk at the county office if I was missing something. She didn't even need to look it up. "Oh," she said, lowering her voice, "that's Bryn." Apparently everyone knew her. She'd been HOA president for almost 8 years. Long enough that no one remembered how she got the job in the first place. Long enough that the board stopped questioning her decisions and just rubber-stamped whatever she put in front of them. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was manufacturing them. I tried ignoring it. Big mistake. Because once she realized letters weren't enough, things escalated. A police cruiser showed up one afternoon while I was replacing window trim. Officer said they got a report about illegal dumping. He walked the property. Saw nothing. Apologized. 2 days later, another visit. This time about unlicensed construction. Then animal control. Someone claimed I was running livestock without permits. I didn't even own animals. Every report traced back to the same anonymous HOA complaint system. Her system. The neighbors stopped waving. Not because they believed her, but because they didn't want to be next. That's when she confronted me directly. She showed up unannounced, clipboard tucked under her arm, smile sharp as glass. Walked right up onto my porch like she owned it. "You're creating problems," she said. I asked her to leave. She didn't. She glanced at my lumber stacks, my tools, the half-restored porch railings. "This neighborhood has standards," she continued. "We don't want it turning into something else." I knew exactly what she meant. Low-income housing, transitional housing, people she didn't approve of. I told her the conversation was over. She leaned in closer and lowered her voice. "You can fight us," she said. "Or you can sell and save yourself the trouble." That night I installed cameras. Not the obvious kind. The kind you don't notice unless you know where to look. Gate, driveway, barn, front porch. Because here's what Bryn never bothered to learn about me. 2 days a week, I sit behind a municipal court bench. Traffic tickets, city code disputes, HOA-related filings. I read laws for a living, and I could feel something coming. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It was preparation. The night everything changed was quiet in a way that didn't feel natural. No wind, no coyotes. Even the insects had gone still. I'd fallen asleep on the couch with paperwork spread across my chest. HOA bylaws, financial disclosures, old meeting minutes I'd pulled through public records requests. Patterns were forming. Numbers didn't line up. Vendor payments looping back to the same shell companies. Bryn's signature was on all of it. At 2:47 a.m., my phone exploded with sound. Not one call. 5, 6, then texts. "Your house is on fire." I was on the road within seconds. Tires screaming. Hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. By the time I reached the property, flames were already eating through the roof. Fire trucks lined the road, lights painting the trees red and blue. Firefighters weren't attacking it, they were containing it. Defensive posture. That's when I smelled it. Gasoline. Thick, sharp, impossible to miss. Across the street, sitting perfectly still, was a white SUV. Engine running. Headlights off. Bryn. She sat there watching my home burn like it was a late-night movie she'd paid to see. No panic. No shock. Just satisfaction. She didn't see me at first. But I saw her, clear as day. When she finally noticed, her eyes widened just a fraction. Then she smiled. Slow. Confident. Certain. She drove away before the fire was even out. The fire marshal called it suspicious within minutes. Accelerant patterns. Multiple ignition points. Arson. Standing there in the ash, watching everything I'd built turn to blackened bone. Something inside me went very calm. Because while she thought she'd erased evidence, she'd walked straight into it. Every camera I installed, still running. Off-site backups. Redundant storage. High-definition footage of her SUV. Timestamps. License plate. Her face illuminated by firelight. I didn't call the police. I called the district attorney. And then I did something Bryn never imagined. I filed a sealed affidavit. As a judge. The same week, the HOA board quietly canceled their next meeting. Too late. 3 days after the fire, Bryn showed up at the courthouse. Not in handcuffs. Not yet. She walked in like she owned the place. White blazer. Confident stride. The same look she wore every time she thought rules bent around her. She didn't know the case file had already crossed my desk. Arson. Fraud. Misuse of HOA funds. False reports. Witness intimidation. I read every page slowly. The footage alone was enough to bury her. The financial audit finished the job. Over $140,000 siphoned out through fake landscaping invoices and shell contractors. Years of quiet theft hidden behind fines and violations. When court opened, I took the bench. That was the moment her confidence finally cracked. She froze when she saw me. Not shock, recognition. Like a puzzle snapping into place too late. Her attorney whispered urgently. Papers shuffled. A request for recusal came flying across the room. Denied. Conflict of interest didn't apply. I wasn't a victim in this courtroom. I was the authority. The prosecutor played the video. Her SUV. The gate. The firelight reflecting in her windshield. Gasps rippled through the room. Bryn's face drained of color. That clipboard confidence collapsed into something smaller. Desperate. I signed the warrant from the bench. She was taken into custody before lunch. The HOA board dissolved within a week. Every fine refunded. Every complaint dismissed. The neighborhood went quiet again, the good kind. Months later, the house was rebuilt. Stronger. Safer. Still standing. It opened its doors to people who needed it most. And Bryn? She learned something important. Rules don't protect you when you use them as weapons. If you're still here, drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever dealt with someone who thought power made them untouchable, you already know how this feels.